Let's go for it. Good morning,
guys.
everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Marketing Crew. And we've been on a bit of a journey over the last few weeks, talking about the growing economic difficulties, the challenges that they may or may not provide for us so that we're well prepared. And today, we're going to be talking to Tracy Carter, or Tracy Carter is going to be leading us in a discussion about an element that's at the heart of what we do, of what all businesses do. We talk about the steps towards marketing. We talk about sales and marketing journeys. We talk about the different elements. But in the end, it's all about clients, customers, and their satisfaction in what we do. And providing that satisfaction is all part of the service that we need to provide for clients. But sadly, what I think can happen easily in the quest for more clients is that once they're a client, they can be ignored. And maybe in terms of retention or in terms of the service we provide, we can go adrift. Tracy has this to a T. So Tracy, I'm going to hand it over to you. I've got my pen handy. I'm going to be the one that's taking lots of notes today. So over to you, Tracy.
So can I share my screen, Paul?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay, yeah, I can. Thank you. So I'm just going to do a little bit on sharing the screen and then I'll go back to us all being in the room. So I want to kind of just talk to you today, and I kind of want to make sure I keep it interactive and focused on the kind of solo entrepreneur. So I'm not going to talk about customer services per se in terms of kind of all the kind of things you should do in terms of meet and greeting your customers, smiling, being polite and all that sort of stuff, because I think everybody in the room knows all of that stuff. But I want to talk about the customer experience, and I use experience more so than saying customer services, because I think it is about how you make them feel when their interaction with you, and kind of then how they feel about recommending you and using you again. So the question for everybody in the room today is, as a business leader, do you want to make sure that you and your brand is synonymous with delivering a great customer experience? And that's a question I guess you've got to answer for yourself, because not everybody does. Some businesses aren't interested in the customer experience. They're just interested in the profit, or they're interested in some other kind of issue. But you need to decide whether customer experience is a really important part for you. And if it is, then you really need to focus on doing that. And I think what's useful for us to discuss as part of this is kind of what will help you stand out different from your competitors and other people because of the way you treat your customers and you make people feel. So that said, I'll share with you a quote. If you build a great experience, customers will tell each other about that. Word of mouth is very powerful. And that's kind of the conversations we've been having leading up to this. That's by Jeff Bezos. Now, whilst I think he's a great businessman, I don't necessarily agree with some of the kind of way he builds his business. But you can argue that from a customer experience point of view, people use Amazon because they get what they want, they get it when they want it, and it delivers to their expectations. So what I'm just going to share just for a minute, just so as you kind of understand where I'm coming from. So for me, this is kind of my model that I use in my business, which is if you start in the middle, the issue is we should all think of ourselves as leaders in our business, even if it's just us, because self-leadership is the most important thing, because you are responsible for leading your business to where you want it to go and your life, and actually living it the way you want to live it. And I think the second bit that goes with that is, for me, and I use these words, even though I know some people don't like it, but for me, it's all about being in service of others. And you have to have that mindset that you're in service of others, because otherwise you become, there for your own fulfilling needs, So there's a real kind of thing there, which takes us nicely into kind of mindset. And I think in terms of this context, mindset for me is about, you need to have a positive mindset anyway, but you also need to see the good intentions of your customers, because I've seen lots of business that see their customers as a pain, as a hindrance, kind of getting in the way, you know, and they're out to defraud you. They're, you know, when you're in the checkout and kind of somebody holds up your £10 note and to check whether it's a real one. So it's kind of saying, I don't trust you. And so you've really got to think about that and kind of what that's doing to the customer experience. Then you've got the issue around empowered employees. Now, we won't discuss that today because I don't think many of us employ many staff, and that's about how you keep everybody on message. So that's one angle to it, but we won't be talking about that at all today. The next bit is around collaboration, and that's how in bigger organizations teams work together to make sure that experience is good. But in our type of businesses, it can be about how we collaborate with others to make sure that overall experience is good. But also, if we're outsourcing any of our services, we need to make sure that they are on message with us and delivering the right customer front end. Otherwise, that could let you down. And then the final bit is it's all about the customer. And I strongly believe that it is all about the customer. Now, I know not everybody does, and I've heard a number of businesses when I've been on networking calls, and they've said, we've had a customer who was a bit rude to one of our staff, so we've told him to sling his up. Now, that's absolutely fine if that's kind of what they want to do, but and they were saying it for the right reasons in terms of somebody was rude to one of their staff members. So you can absolutely, if you're in business for yourself and that's how you choose to run it, you don't have to have customers you don't want to have. But if you have got customers and if they're paying you, then you do have to make sure you're delivering a quality service to them and valuing and respecting them, in my view. So what I wanted to just share, and I've kind of tailored this today for what we're doing now, but we as business owners have got to be adaptable to the changes that are going on around us. And I think we've got to be adaptable to our customers. So I've used the acronym ADAPTIVE to kind of just talk about some of the key parts of customer services. Then when we finish that, we're going to pick on one of these parts and have a full debate and discussion on it, which I think will be the best use of everybody's time today. So adaptive for the customer. Attention is about making sure that you listen and understand your customers and what they really need. And I think most people in this room, from the conversations we've been having, do that. But sometimes you do need to listen a bit harder to what your customers are telling you, because I've experienced where businesses are doing things in one way because they think that's the right way, but the customer's experience of that is different. And so you need to kind of understand that and see where that fits with your ethos and with what you've agreed to do with your customers. The second bit is kind of around design. And I think with design, you've got to make sure that you build your customer processes into your business from start to finish, and before start and after finish. And I think great customer service doesn't happen by accident. It happens on purpose. So design it in and think about what you want that to be. You should always appreciate your customers. See them as unique, because if you see them and treat them as unique, they will always remember you. If you deliver poor service, they'll never forget you. And that's kind of really true, you know. And when you deliver poor services, people will tell other people about that, which in our line of businesses, we don't want that. But equally, if you deliver a really great experience, they will recommend you, they will tell more and more people. And that's where the word of mouth is really important. The positivity, as I said earlier, it's all about the mindset and seeing your customers with good intentions. You know, yes, you will have customers that may be rude. And yes, it's right to say to your customer, please don't swear at me. I'm going to hang up on you if you continue to swear. But you still do it respectfully and you still do it politely. You know, if it's the first time and it's a known person and they're, you know, depends on the way they're swearing, and if they're swearing at you and being really aggressive and rude. But you've got to kind of, you know, treat people as you would expect to be treated yourself is kind of, you know, one of the key issues. Touch points. Now, this is the bit we're going to spend the time on in a minute, looking at the different touch points in your businesses and whether you're focused on the customer and whether you're trying to kind of stand out and do something special for that customer. Improvements, you should always be making improvements to your services based on the learning that you get from dealing with different customers, from what you see, what you hear, what you learn. And I think the thing we were talking about just now, you've got to see the value in customers giving you feedback. And actually, a complaint is one of the best things that can happen sometimes to you in a business, because you get the opportunity then to interact with that customer on an individual basis. And if you see that customer as unique and you look to kind of put it right and over put it right, then you can turn that customer into a really loyal customer, because people don't have loyalty to businesses until they test them out. In terms of if it's gone right or wrong, but you will lose a customer if it goes wrong. So build in that kind of feedback. And finally, always look to exceed your customer expectations. That's your standing point, not just kind of dealing with the customer, but exceeding their customer expectations. So this is where sometimes you've got to make sure that when you're setting your standards, always think under promise and over deliver. Because that way, if you can do a job and it takes you half an hour, if you tell your customer, I'll be back to you within half an hour, and something happens and it goes wrong and you can't get back to them until 50 minutes, then you're on a hiding to nothing, you know. So you're better off saying it'll take an hour and being back 10 minutes early. So it's all about how you think about these things when you're interacting with your customer. So that's the kind of the key bits, and we can go into a lot more detail on that, but I wanted to kind of get into a discussion point around touch points. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to kind of talk about the 5 customer touch points, and how we can think about that in our business and how that can kind of improve us. So anybody got any questions at this stage before we go into that? And please feel free, because it is interactive. Anne-Marie.
Can I just ask a question about feedback quickly, if possible? Because yesterday I was thinking about designing a feedback form, because I don't currently have one.
Yeah.
So for people that I've finished the project on. My issue is I'm too scared to do it and send it in case it comes back and says something horrible. So I'm really worried about that. And the same with asking for LinkedIn referrals. But if I did one and I sent it out, how many times, because I'm assuming they're not going to then reply and do it straight away, it'll just go into how many times should you resend it, or how often should you send it, or do you just send it once, or what's the sort of protocol on that?
So I would say send your feedback out. So get over the fear and send the feedback out. And we'll go into more about this, because you've got to hear the best bit of gold dust you'll get is when somebody tells you they didn't like something, and it might hurt, but you can do something about that and make sure that never happens again. In fact, it kind of, you over exceed kind of what you would have done. But I would send out the feedback form. Then I would probably leave it a week, and then I would just do a reminder, and then I wouldn't do any more, because I think you don't want to kind of bombard them with kind of, will you do my feedback? But I think a one-off reminder is okay after about a week or 2 weeks. But I don't know, do other people have different views on that? Because this is, there is no right or wrong on this. This is kind of really about the standards we want to set for our own businesses. Ollie.
Yeah, like Anne-Marie, I've actually set up a form and I sent it out to my clients that I've worked with, put websites live recently, and just don't hear anything back from them. And I was kind of wondering, when should ask again? And I know from my experience with the clients that I work with, when they're trying to get testimonials for their websites and things like that, they just find it impossible with businesses. I'm working with one client and it's taken them about 4 or 5 months to get any kind of, they want to have case studies on their site and to try and get any feedback from their customers, because they're all running businesses and just don't seem to have the time to kind of, fill out a form for 5-10 minutes and do anything. And having maybe waiting, but is there anything in particular we could put in there that would not incentivize, because obviously don't want to do that, but encourage people or anything, or is it just picking up the phone?
So I think that's the kind of the core of the discussion we're going to have now, cool. Because I think if we look at the touch points, so for me there are, and I haven't, let me just where did I put that? There are five touch points. I'll read them out to you. So as far as I think about it, I think the first touch point is when people are checking you out and watching you before they've even engaged with you. So you don't know who these people are. So that's the first one. The second one is about the engagement, when they might start talking to you to kind of decide whether they're going to sign up with you or not. Then the third bit is when they've signed up with you and you're then into that kind of contract with them of delivering whatever it is you're going to do. The fourth touch point is when they've made a complaint or they've shown some dissatisfaction with you in the services. And the fifth point, I wrote down after sales and then scrubbed off sales because I hate the word sales. The after service is about how do you engage with them after you've finished with them, and how do you make sure that through all of those touch points, you're treating that customer as somebody unique and special all the way through. Because I think, Ollie, if you treat them, and you can't always get people to feedback. You're right. Some people won't, they never will. But if you treat them as special and they love your service, they'll give you a review, they'll feedback. Nick.
Yeah, just picking up on Anne-Marie's point and Ollie's point, I always find it really difficult as well in terms of getting kind of feedback and reviews. But one thing I've started to do, which I think is helping, is at the end of a shoot, I'll often say to the clients, would it be okay if I sent you either a feedback form or ask for a Google review once we've kind of finished the process? It'd be great to get your feedback so other clients can see what it's like to work with me. And just having that verbal communication with them rather than just sending the email cold, kind of warm them up a little bit, and you actually get some interaction at the time. And then I think they're much more likely then to do it because you've talked about it.
Definitely. Now, I'm not sure about Hans, so I'm going to pick an order. So I'm going to go Marcus, Rod, then Paul.
Thank you. I mean, I guess there's two types of feedback here we're talking about, though, isn't there, Tracy? We're talking about feedback as a testimonial, as a review, and ideally you want that to be glowing. And then there's feedback that's going to be more constructive, shall I say. So you're asking, in fact, for two different types of feedback, aren't you? So how do you differentiate between that?
So to answer that, so let me give an example now. So I'm doing this presentation to you all guys. So I hope at the end of this, you'd be happy to give me some feedback about what you liked, what you didn't like, what I could do better, because that will help me to make sure I can improve it for the next group of people I talk to about customer services. So I would really appreciate, and I genuinely mean this, I would really appreciate your feedback, and especially the things you don't like, because the best bit of learning for me, if you come back to me and go, oh, that was lovely, Trace, that is rubbish. Do you know, it's nice, thank you, but it's rubbish in the sense of me as a business trying to improve my services. But when people, and I've had this a lot, even in leadership, when people have said to me, I had one person who said, Trace, when you come into the meeting, you're always busy, you're rushing, and kind of like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders. But this is my time, and I just want you to kind of be present with me in my one-to-one with you, And I had to sit there and take that and kind of think, he was absolutely right. And I'll tell you what, I never turned up late and I never went into a meeting with any kind of baggage at all. And that was a great learning lesson for me for the rest of my career, So don't be frightened of it. Yes, it hurts, but you can do so much with it. Whereas if people don't give you honest feedback, you can't do anything.
So what you're saying then is feedback that could be constructive or critical is best done verbally, and then feedback that might be done for your test as a testimonial is best done in another way, written or whatever.
I think don't even talk about testimonials until you get the service finished.
Okay,
because it's like, oh, can you give me a review when I finish this? I'd really appreciate it. You're thinking, well, you haven't delivered anything yet, so always do that at the end, and by then you should have kind of really have engaged with that customer well. So, but feedback during the process, and you can do it in an email where I could have followed up with this and kind of said, look, I love doing the presentation to you this morning, but I'd really appreciate some feedback because it would be valuable to me. And you can do it that way. But again, people might not, and people don't always. So you have to also accept that people won't always give you feedback. Rod?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a little bit more personal because it's such a very personal thing dealing with a death and dealing with someone's loved one, that I can actually, at some point in the initial conversation, you know, when I go and meet the client, talk about the whole process and say that I will be, the very last thing I'll do is deliver mum, dad, whoever's ashes. And at that point, you'll be able to review what I've done and either leave me with a nice 5-star review on Google, or tell me where I went wrong, you know. So and I don't have any conversation of where I went wrong. Touch wood. Is there any wood in here? Probably not. But, you know, so I make a point as part of the whole thing that I do. And when I go and deliver someone's ashes, I'm not there going, yeah, bye. No, I allow myself 1 hour, the same amount of time as I do when I do the initial consultation with them. And I sit and have a cup of tea and a biscuit. We have a right good chat about it all. And I tell them there's no rush. Don't worry about buying a box or some urn or something like that. Have a think about what you're going to do with it. We have a really good, meaningful conversation about their loved one that's there in a, you know, a box from the crematorium. And if they're not sure how to do the review, I'll show them how to go on there. And, you know, it really does. That's a real big part of what I do. It really, that last part for me is really important, because the next person that doesn't know a funeral director, and that's where I get my business, by the way, will judge me by the reviews that I've recently had. So
and
they're very important.
That is a really good example of kind of where you have to have customer services at the heart of what you do, don't you, Rod?
Yeah, I mean, making a difference is, you know, the massive part of what I do. It's not about the money. It's about making a complete difference and delivering a funeral that you would want delivered for your own family. You know?
Yeah. Thanks, Rod. Paul.
I'm going to come back to Anne-Marie, and I know exactly how she feels, because in asking for feedback, you're perhaps frightened that they might say something bad. In my experience of actually delivering feedback, especially on things like Amazon, etc., and a lot of things I don't have the time to do, but normally I'm a bit on the kinder side. You know, they'd have to be really bad for me to give a bad review. You know, most people tend to want to be kind, but I think actually, if you're genuinely interested, I think if we say, how could we have done better? I wonder whether that's a good question, because that invites somebody to start to think about little gaps. That might be quite powerful. But the point I wanted to make to Anne-Marie is that if you get somebody that tells you something negative about the experience, it was perhaps that you've got to decide, is that just a one-off? Is it a one-off for that person's perception, because they may be in a bad mood or whatever? Or is it a one-off because that experience was, you were tired on that day, or you're a bit grumpy or whatever? Because there's a danger that we start adjusting everything because of everybody saying something different. I don't think we should be frightened of people's feedback. I think we genuinely, you know, I went to a meeting yesterday, and Rod and I, it was a chamber meeting, and I formed certain impressions. And certainly there's lots of ways I could help the chair improve the way he organized things. And that would be a kind thing to do, rather than let him continue to be fairly chaotic. Anyway, that was all I wanted to say.
It's always your choice. Oh, Jason, did you put your hand up?
Yeah, it's just triggered the memory of a couple of business mentors that are fairly popular on social media. So, you know, they reckon you can get sort of a 1 to 2% negative content, but you've got to be really clear when you read a negative review or comment. Is that actually a genuine critic? Is that a hater, or actually a troll? Someone it's their world. So, and the real critics, the people who are actually causing you to step up, do you a great service on that. But it was also, it's just kind of reminded me as well, as several times I've worked with people on web staff or the digital marketing, and there's been negative reviews on their social media that have never been replied or commented to because people aren't aware of them. So Google will often set you up a business places listing that the business owner doesn't know about, and then people have left negative reviews. So that's also just kind of a reminder for everyone to be checking your own business details online to make sure there's nothing out there that's not been dealt with. It's also a really good way to demonstrate a response. So if you do get a negative review and it's public, actually respond to that in a public environment. That can be really useful.
Paul, and then Nick.
Anne-Marie led off by asking for feedback as part of a process. What Jason's just covered there, of course, we do get feedback on social media when we don't even ask for it. And I'll give you a brief example. The mayor alerted me to the fact there were a load of Harley Davidsons coming through Wells, and he was going to bless them, I think. Anyway, I decided to take, I took the drone, but it was too windy and wet. But I took a video and I put it together fairly quickly. And as I normally do, I put some music on the background. Maybe it was a tad too loud. And I sent it out there on social media. And I started to get criticism about the music drowning the sound of the Harleys. And I could have taken that personally. I could really have been quite upset by that. But on reflection, I thought they're absolutely right. If I was doing this again, I wouldn't have included, because you want to hear the sound of a Harley Davidson. So what I did is, to everybody that replied in that way, I wrote back and said, I think you're right on reflection. I've re-edited it. It's on YouTube without the soundtrack and or the music. And everybody, the number of people that thanked me for that, and of course it got more views. So I think sometimes if something's not gone right, I think it's very human to say, hey, you're absolutely right. What you do with that then in terms of compensation is another matter that you may lead on to. But I think if on reflection you try and see things the way other people are seeing them, and you think, you know what, I think you're right. We don't always get it right. So we shouldn't be frightened of that.
Right, Nick, then Marcus.
Yeah, Tracy, I can't remember at which point you mentioned mindset. I think it's fairly on in your presentation. And I think the more you think, the more I've kind of thought about that word. That kind of influences everything, doesn't it? It's how you behave when you're with the customer. It's how you behave after you've finished serving your customer. And if you can keep in that positive mindset,
yeah,
and also a kind of positive learning mindset as well, of actually taking criticism positively and not negatively, I think that can just kind of completely shift the way you deal with problems because inevitably a problem will come up at some point. Something will become a challenge.
Yeah, and as individuals, I think we've always got to take, and this is back to the leadership bit, because if somebody says, Trace, your customer service kind of presentation was shit, it didn't hit any of the spots that we wanted to do, then I've got to kind of think, oh my God, was it really? And if it was, I got to face that. But if it wasn't, that's not my problem. And I've got to ignore that person because that person might have been completely. So we have to judge, sometimes what we take seriously and what we don't, because of the trawling and everything else. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Nick. It is about
and maybe occasionally we've got to learn to let stuff go as well, haven't we? And not get too wrapped up in it.
Yeah. Marcus, and then Rod, and then Anne-Marie.
And then me.
Firing off.
And then Paul.
Is the customer always right? I run an Airbnb, and I've learned a lot about customer service. I've had about 500 people in it. And there's one review on Airbnb, there's one little segment that I do lose out on, and it's my location. And only a little bit. Very rarely I lose a star on my location. And basically the guests say, oh, it wasn't near the place that I thought it would be. So I say to Airbnb, well, what am I meant to do? Am I meant to move house or something? What can I do about this? And they said, oh, just ignore it. It doesn't mean anything. My point I'm making here is that the customer should have found out, first of all, looked at a map and seen if I was near where they needed to go. I don't know that. So are we in danger here of acquiescing or kowtowing to the customer at the cost of our service? Sorry.
So I can only go by my kind of view on this from kind of, my experience on everything. So I would say, yes, the customer is always right. in the mindset issue about how you deal with it. But what I would do with that review thing, kind of if they said it was miles from anywhere, is I would thank them, you know, and I would say, I either wouldn't respond, because sometimes, you know, even though you might say the customer's, sometimes you can't respond, but equally I might think, do I need to make that clear in the literature that we are further away from the town centre or wherever it is? Because actually that is a, from a customer's point of view, that's been important. Yes, they should have checked it out, Marcus, you're not at fault for that, but actually I can make sure I let the next person taking that Airbnb knows that is an issue for some of the customers. So that's the bit where I say, yes, they're right. They're not always right, and you don't always do what they say, and you don't always respond to it, but you have to think about the customer, because your Airbnb wouldn't work for you if you didn't take into account the customer, because without customers you'd have no let-ins.
Yeah, for sure, that's quite correct. You're correct in what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it is quite clear my listing exactly where I am in my.
So then that's when you let go, you know, because
yeah, you've got to let it go. Exactly. So I'm saying, yeah, the customer isn't always right.
Yeah, but if the customer was talking to you and said, I was disappointed it was further away, if you said, well, you should have bloody done your research beforehand, that I would say was not good customer services. But if you said, I'm really sorry you didn't find it to be, you know, I thought it was clear on the listings and stuff, job done.
Yeah. Thank you.
Was it Rod and then Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I think sometimes, Marcus, you know, I'm looking for a hotel at the moment in Salisbury, and I noticed on the thing it says so many miles or half a mile or quarter of a mile from the city centre. I want to be right in the centre. So, you know, I know what you're saying and how your customer feedback is. But what I was going to say, you know, I've had to fire myself so many times, right? Now, the reason I've had to fire myself is because us as business people, we're always on show, right? Everybody knows who you are. You drive a car like I do with the number plate on there to hide the age of the darn thing. It's got WFS on it. They put that into Google, they know who you are, and they ring up your number to complain. And there's a guy who overtook me. I tell you, I don't know how fast he was going, but I tell you, he's beating the speed limit and he had a hat on. I said, don't worry, I'll sack him. I know exactly who you're talking about. He's done it before, that bastard. We'll get rid of him. Don't worry about it. And I've had to sack myself so many times, it's unbelievable. And when you're out, and the worst one of all is when you're out on a funeral. Oh,
well, especially if you're speeding.
Well, no, you mustn't be speeding, although, you know, that wasn't me that time. But yes, but, you know, you've got to be very careful because people are aware and they are watching you and they won't think nothing of phoning up and complaining about you. And I don't blame them, really. I think, you know, we are 100%, we've got to be very positive, very aware that people that aren't in business, I don't know what it is about it, but I think sometimes, you know, they think business people should act the way perhaps their perception or the way they look at things. I don't know, but it's quite surprising sometimes.
Anne-Marie.
Yeah, so I was wondering how we know how far to take the constructive feedback in terms of changing or modifying our product service behaviour. And I guess what I mean by that is, as somebody that's confident in what I do but new to business, I very much feel like I don't have the answers when it comes to business. So I am very, well, I don't have the answers when it comes to what I'm doing, but I kind of have a bit more of a clue. But I'm very happy to listen to business experts and another person that will say you need to charge more or you need to do this or whatever it might be, which is all great and good. But I have this, I can't even remember who it was and what it was, but somebody last week was telling me I needed to be doing something. And in my gut, it just felt wrong. And I'm like, hang on a second. That will then start to move away from who I am, what I am, the business I am, and what I want to do. However, they are a proven business entrepreneur person that's made loads of money and launched loads of businesses. So this is where I kind of struggle thinking, do I listen to, not necessarily everybody, but how do I know what to listen to and what not to listen to? Do I just go with my gut, or is there a formula? Or
So what I would say to you on that, Anne-Marie, is I think always listen to your gut, because, you know, that's our kind of one of our key things that kind of tells us. Then I think there's another level, and because Anne-Marie and I have kind of done some of the kind of saboteur stuff, I think you've got to just question, are you not doing something because it's a fear and you just don't want to do it? And if it's not that, and you really believe that just because somebody else tells you that's how to do it and they've done it that way, doesn't mean to say that's right for you, you know? And so if it's not, don't do it. I mean, we've all probably seen lots of gurus out there telling us sell, 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 do this, this, this. And some of it is good advice, but not all of it is good advice, because actually a lot of them are just selling their services. So they're just doing hard sells to us to buy what they're selling, you know? So always go with your gut, but try and do a bit of measurement on that in terms of, you know, is there something stopping you that's a kind of fear, or is it you're absolutely right, you know who you are, you know what you want to do, and you might want to stick with that, but you've just got to kind of, the feedback gives you an opportunity to have the conversation and explore it, and then you decide what you do with it. Paul, you were next, I think.
Yes. Just two things, and I've finished on this particular subject. And somebody just mentioned people are watching you on social media. So, and I think Marcus started that. Somebody's made a comment. How you respond to it publicly, other people will observe, and other people are not fazed by one negative review. If I get a negative review about a particular product I'm about to buy, it's one person's opinion. So the answer for Anne-Marie is, if somebody makes a criticism, then that's their perception. You don't know where they're coming from. You don't know where their issues are. You don't know their expectations. If there's a consistent pattern, then maybe it needs to be looked at seriously. So that's what I would say to that. But I would send the feedback in your case, get that feedback request out, at the risk that somebody might tell you something about you that you don't give yourself credit for. So very often people think more of you and different things about your service that you haven't even thought of. That's for sure. And that's one of the added benefits of asking for genuine feedback. That's all I would say.
Nick.
Yeah, Tracy, I think one thing that we've probably nearly all of us have got in common here is that we don't have a transactional relationship with our clients. You know, some of the client relationships we have might, from first point of contact through to delivery of finished product, could be 2-3 months, maybe with Anne-Marie even more if it's a really big book project. And I guess we've got opportunities throughout that process to kind of check in with the customer rather than just waiting for everything at the very end.
Nice leading, Nick.
Have you got any kind of tips on that? Or
yes. So that's a nice leading, because that takes us into what we're going to do now is have a conversation on each of those 5 touch points about how can we improve that process for our customer and think about our customer in each of those. Some things we've talked about before and we're already doing, and some things hopefully we'll get some new ideas from people in the room and everything else. So let's just think about that kind of, so people checking you out. So this is people we don't know. I think there was a good point that was made just now about make sure how you're showing up, because I know a lot of people, and I've watched some people on Facebook and stuff, and they're swearing and they're cussing and they're kind of doing things that I find some of it a bit vulgar, you know? And so I'd look at them and I think I wouldn't ever go to them if they were selling a service, you know? So I think there is something about, you have to watch how you're showing up on all kind of social media and when you're in meetings and everything else, because people are going to, they start judging you before they ever engage with you. Anne-Marie.
On that point, which I 100% agree with, the thing that bugs me, and there was an example of this yesterday, is people who show up in a way I would never dream of showing up in on a business platform and have tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of engagement. Example yesterday, I don't know the lady, I don't know why it popped up in my feed, but somebody was saying she'd been made redundant and had struggled to get the pay from her employer. That was the essence of the thread. the picture that she put was a photograph of herself wearing a very, very short dress, and she was a young, good-looking lady, very short dress, boobs hanging out. And I just thought, I'm sure people haven't commented because they're concerned about your redundancy journey. They've commented because you're putting yourself there like that. Now, obviously, I don't look like that, so I wouldn't ever want to do that in any case. But that is that to me is wrong, because she had thousands of comments, which I could only dream of having. So that's what bugs me. I can't get that sort of, it seems a bit of a dichotomy, and I can't get my head around it.
So I think with all of this, there, you know, you're absolutely right. I see a lot of that, and sometimes I look at that and I get jealous because I can't do that. But actually, you've got to let those go, because we're never going to present ourselves in that way. We're never going to be like that. They're going to do what they do, and they might get loads of likes, but it doesn't mean to say they get any business from it, or any kind of anything, or even the kind of right kind of likes, you know. So I think you've got to not compare yourself with the wrong type of people. And there are bad things that happen in this world where kind of bad people get good results, you know, and that is just a fact of life, whether we like it or not. And so we've just got to make sure that we're delivering our businesses in the way that sits with our values and with how we want to kind of deliver and be perceived. Paul?
Why was that post just an issue? Why didn't you just scroll past it?
Because the photo was
I think I saw it, Anne-Marie, as well in my feed. Yeah, another one you mean.
Is that the one you sent to me, Nick?
But no, it's an interesting.
There's loads of them, and the thing that makes me laugh as well. And sorry about if this is going to offend anybody, but the women that do put themselves out there, and they get outraged when somebody comments and says, "Well, you're only getting comments because you've stuck your boobs on there," and they get outraged. I'm like, but it's true, you've stuck your boobs out there. What do you expect people to say? Sorry, do apologise if that offends anybody. Bit of a soapbox.
No, I think sometimes, I mean, I do the same when I'm reading articles, and I'm thinking, what the hell am I reading this for? You know, it's a waste of my time. So that's why I say, what was the issue? Was it a distraction? Was it? It
was the photo, and then I was like, what's she trying to tell me? So then I read the post. I'm like, well, that's got nothing to do with being made redundant.
And also, were you judging her? I mean, maybe she doesn't realize. I mean, maybe she does realize. Maybe she thinks that's important. Maybe she thinks her boobs are important. For God's sake, it's not. It's absolutely. I can tell you, it's not. You can. It's like most men are children. They get tired with playing with toys and they move on to something else. There you go.
I think Tracy, we'll just gloss over that quickly. I think Tracy.
Where are we going with this one, Paul?
Yeah. Tracy might
get us back on track.
There are.
It's a bit of a boo-boo all round, isn't it?
There are a lot of men that think women who do that are naive and don't understand what they're doing. I 100% believe that they know exactly what they're doing.
And I think, again, this is a personal view, but I think that's why with some of social media, I don't even go there, because there's too much of it that I don't personally like, and I'm not going to change it. I don't want to comment on it. So I just make sure I stick with the things that are important in kind of my sphere of things.
Rod wants to know what page is it on?
Yeah.
Ollie, come in quickly.
I'm also going to, I will help with this, but it's called a thirst trap, isn't it? I think it's where people use sort of sexually provocative photos to try and encourage engagement. And I've noticed this a lot. Everyone's probably heard of PETA, P-E-T-A, the kind of animal rights group, that they do a lot of kind of stuff with naked women covered in blood and things like that to try and get people's attention to then share their message. Where was I going with this? Something I read recently was quite good, was the only person you should compare yourself with is the previous version of yourself. And I think that's quite good in terms of trying to grow. But yeah, bringing it back a little bit to what Tracy was saying, the showing up, people checking you out. And yeah, it's made me think about, yeah, my social media and my websites, that when people are going on there and I haven't put a news article on there for a long time and things like that, or I haven't updated my portfolio for a long time, and people are going on there and maybe seeing that, I need to kind of improve that a lot, because that, like you said, Tracy, is the first part of this journey, these touch points. And yeah, it's made me think I really need to kind of get on top of that, because if it's where people are landing to start with and just having a quick look, seeing, you know, what's he talking about, what stuff's he done recently, and there's nothing there, I think that will just put people off and they're not going to go any further. So yeah, that was quite an important bit for me from that.
And I think that, you know, even for me, when I was kind of preparing for this, I was thinking, gosh, I'm not doing that. And so I think there are a lot of things that, if we think about it from the customer perspective, because, you know, if you had, if Rod was a kind of a strong salesperson, he'd be saying different things to me. And this is where you've got to decide about whether it's about the hard sell, get the attraction, get the attention no matter what, or whether it's about quality of service and kind of, you know, what you want to build. So yeah, I think if you look at your website, I think there's a couple of questions about social media and websites. So is your website speaking to your customer? Now, we all talk about, you know, what's the pain points for our customers and why they would use us, but think about it from a customer experience point of view as well. And, you know, how do they know that you're going to deliver the right experience for them? And what recourse do they have if it doesn't work? You know, do you offer a money back guarantee if they're not happy? Or do you have previous clients that you can refer them to get a kind of full understanding of what you do before they buy with you? There's all those type of things that you can think about. You know, I think we talked about this as well a couple of weeks ago about, you know, especially in this climate, you know, do you offer concessions or payment plans or special offers and stuff, you know? So all those type of things will play to your customer and their experience. And I think, you know, that bit about, are you always showing up authentically, you know, and being you, kind of, because that's where people will sit, you know, they'll see you on networking groups, they'll see you in kind of face-to-face things, they'll see you on the post, and you know, you've got to be real in all of those. You can't keep chopping and changing. Do you come across, I'll come to you now, Rod, do you come across as being confident, you know, because or do you come across as being unconfident? So there's this kind of balance we've got to get about kind of giving our customers confident that we can deliver what they want in a way that's not arrogant and in a way that's going to give them a good experience. And that's how I think we need to think about some of our website and some of our interactions before their customers.
Can I just say quickly, sorry, said lady's point was that she didn't feel confident in herself.
But actually, Anne-Marie, and I know some people do use their body because they haven't got the inner confidence, and I know it's bizarre, but they do then do that because that's what gives them the confidence. Anyway, I'm going to move us off of the ladies' boobs and on to Rod.
They probably won't get the right sort of business, Anne-Marie, so I shouldn't worry about it. I was just looking at empowering and collaboration. I mean, we may not have employees, but we do have people we work with. And I know myself, you know, often I've got a celebrant that I work very closely with, and I explain to the customer always that she will deliver what I want to deliver for you, which is a celebration of a life, not necessarily a funeral. My staff, they're always at my premises, at my headquarters, at least an hour before the funeral. We'll have a run through, a dress rehearsal. They know they're on show. Everybody that has anything to do with my business, even the florist, knows that I'm going to take a photograph of her flowers and put it on social media, or at least pass it on to the client, so they've got some some record of it. And even, as people know, even down to like when we're doing videos and stuff like that, it's all going to go up on the website. So it's important that those people are in sync with you, and understand your positive mindset, and remember that they're not there for them. They're there for the family first, me second, and then themselves last, because you know what they're getting out of it is about the whole build up of that particular performance.
Yeah, correct. Paul,
you this first touch point, this first of 5. So, you know, I reckon we may need to move on. But you said check it. You know, what are the touch points? They're checking you out. They're watching you. I think it's very easy to default into thinking solely about what we do, rather than, you know, how we help people. That's one thing. In other words, we imagine that they are naturally going on because they're thinking about a business transaction. But part of what they're watching for are the non-business signals, the authenticity, the kindness, the friendliness, all of the other things that maybe sometimes, and as Rod said, people are watching you all the time, the way you behave when you're not in business. You know, so I think people have, you know, you've made me think about those elements. I tend to be, you know, business-like when it comes to business. And I'd like to think quite upstanding and respectable. I don't swear. I don't involved in, you know, boobs and things like that. But that's maybe my Victorian inhibitions.
Nick.
Yeah, actually, I think what Paul's just describing there is our brand, isn't it? It's how we behave, whether we're with the client, whether we're on social media, whether we're walking down the high street. And as Rod said, we're always on show, and all of that comes together to, it's our values, isn't it? And what we stand for, and that is our brand. And I think you're right. I think our clients may be a lot more sophisticated than we sometimes give them credit for. That they're checking us out all the way through that process, and they're building a picture of,
correct,
this is someone I want to actually work with.
It's how you put that over as well. Say on a website, it'd be interesting to know how you do.
I don't think you can, Paul, can you? It has to be part of lots of different touch points over a period of time.
I think that's why I like video on a website, because you can at least, they can form an opinion about your smile, about your tonality and things like that, which is a lot harder to do in text. Although Anne-Marie, I'm sure, has that nailed down brilliantly. And she does, actually. I always enjoy reading. She writes beautifully. I think you're engaged. You're drawn into the way, and I noticed that, and I don't mind being drawn.
I think her next post might be quite gritty.
I'll advertise this networking session in the next post, so watch out.
Last thing I'm just going to pick up on here is, and I'll kind of aim at it, kind of Martin and kind of Ollie, because you're in the web design and kind of graphic design kind of business, you know, think about if they're going on your website, is your website looking good? Is it working properly? Because I've gone on websites for people that do websites, and the link is not there, or something's wrong. And you sort of think, well, if that's how their website's looking, why would I go to them if I wanted them to build my website, sort of thing, you know? So think about that. And Martin, you know, your graphic designs, do your graphic design speak to your customers when they're just checking you out before they see you? You know, that's the sort of thing I think we all need to just think about in our businesses from a kind of customer perspective. So I'll take us on to the engagement and kind of sign up, and I'll go quickly because I know we're going to come out of time, and there's going to be some other bits that will take probably a bit more time. But so this is all about what service standards do you offer your customers? Are they anywhere, you know, in your engagement with them about kind of what you'll do for them, what they'll get back? Now, some of it you don't need to have, because you know, if you're taking photography, for example, if I was going to engage with you, would you say, you know, we'll do a shoot within 3 weeks, and then 2 weeks after the shoot, you get all your photos and you'll get X number of photos, you know? So do they know what they're going to get as part of that? And do you then deliver to those timescales? You know, because I've also known other people that have kind of said, I'll get something to you in sort of 3 to 4 days. And then they're on day 5 and they still haven't even got round to looking at it because they're busy with something else. That's terrible, you know. Never, and this is the under promise and over deliver. Never give the tightest timescale as a standard, because you'll fail and then you can't get back from that, you know. So always think about that, but then make sure you deliver to those standards. When you're engaging with that customer, and I think this goes back to that kind of, do you engage in a kind of full sales pitch? So if I was a salesperson here, I'd say, close the deal on the call. Don't let them get away. You know, cement it down, get them to sign it. from a customer point of view, I'd like to think you'd give them more time. You know, if they need time to think about it, you'd give them that time. You wouldn't be pressurizing them, you know. But again, that's kind of down to your style and how you try and close a new customer. But I think about it from the customer's point of view, because some customers just, you know, I'm always a reflector overnight, you know, so I'll never, when I've got somebody on the phone and they're selling something to me, even if I want it, I'll kind of go, I'll come back to you tomorrow, because I want to reflect on it and then I'll do it. But I won't close. In fact, I'll kind of go away from them if they're forcing me to close that day, you know. So think about those things you do. So anybody got any kind of good examples about kind of if they're being too pushy, or kind of what they would do around those sort of standards to get that person to sign up? Paul?
Where you've said engagement, sign up, I think the focus at that stage, once you've discussed the issue, is about expectations. What are their expectations? Does your proposal meet their expectations? Is there anything else that they might want, which may or may not be charged for? So our job is to manage those expectations and then exceed them. But unless we know what their expectations are, and I think it works both ways. I've had two incidences in the last 2 weeks that has brought to mind. One was that I was approached by Wells Golf Club to actually start some live events. And I've had a meaningful discussion. A week goes by, I've not heard anything back. I'm now in the second week. I should have nailed it and said, right, when are we going to, I did nail when do you want to get this started? And I put a framework, but I didn't nail when can I expect to hear back? You know, when are we going to make a decision on this? Who's involved? I know who's involved with the decision, but I didn't nail the time. So that's slightly irritating me, but I've got to stop that. The other thing is, I was asked to go and talk to them at Glastonbury FM, the radio station. The lady I was having a dialogue with, we arranged the time. I got there, she wasn't there. The fellow director stood in and apologized for her, but I still haven't heard back from her. I haven't had a note or anything. And again, I've done the same thing again. I've just given them some advice and told them what I think they ought to do, asked them some meaningful questions, but I've not managed the expectation about my expectation. When will I hear back? You know, when are you looking to discuss this, blah, blah, blah. So I think that engagement bit is as much about expectations on both sides.
Yeah. And you could follow back to say, look, is there any more information you need from me to help you make a decision, you know, without being pushy?
Well, actually, they don't have much money. So in the Glastonbury FM bit, but you're right, I will do that. I've already done that. I've already emailed the Wells Golf Club, and but I'm getting to a stage, do I really want to work in these circumstances? I don't know whether I do.
And that's another choice, isn't it? Sometimes you've got to let it go because it's not going to be worth your time and stuff, you know. Anne-Marie.
I hadn't thought of that, Paul. That's really valuable. Thank you very much, because I always say to people, what's your expectation, i.e. what's your publication timeline? When are you looking to get the book done? And I work back from that. But I don't actually place any expectations of mine onto them. And actually, I just made a note as you were speaking. I've got a lady who promised 2 weeks ago to sign her contract and she still hasn't done it. And I know she's been busy and she's been away and so on. So I've kind of not pressured because I don't want to, but actually what you've just said there is perfectly valid. She either wants the service or she doesn't. So I need to be clearer perhaps about my expectations, because I'm a business at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I think that posture also gives you, without being arrogant, it gives you that confidence, because frankly, if Glastonbury FM said, I tell you what, I think we need to engage with the community, we're engaging with the community, we need to engage with sponsors, maybe we ought to have a regular monthly networking event sponsored by GFM. I'm going to take all my time up there, and if Wells turn around and want something, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to do it. You know, so that, you know, so it benefits everybody to have expectations and lay those out.
Martin?
Yeah, Tracy, I just wondered what you thought about, you know, like Anne-Marie was talking about expectations from a client, but also in terms of asking for payment up front and for your work. You know, how do you think that works? Because sometimes I might have a project and it might go, you know, they might not give me the content for months, but you've put like all this work in, you know, so in terms of cash flow, the practice of quite a few design companies, as you say, well, you pay 50% up front. I wonder what your sort of thoughts.
So I think that's absolutely fine, so long as you make that clear up front. Because I think if when you're talking to a prospective client and you're saying, look, I can work with you, this is my cost. My normal terms are I expect 50% up front and then 50% after, you know, is that okay with you? No problem at all with that. The bit that I've had done to me even is when people have said, yeah, I'll do something with you. And then they send me an invoice before I've even had the work done and asking for the full payment. And, you know, and I know, you know, some of the people, you know, and you know, they might have cash flow problems, you know, and so you might well pay it, but I would have much preferred the conversation had taken place and I'd been asked for that beforehand. So I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for it, Martin, but I think just make it clear up front when you're talking to that customer.
Cool.
Rod.
Yeah, I think it's like if I'm on the market, I'm talking to someone about a funeral plan, I'll only take their details. I won't discuss it with them entirely on the market. So there's a procedure then that I follow. So I will then follow that up with a nice letter saying how nice it was to meet you on the market, and here are some details. And you know, it's much more personal. So I'd perhaps like to come and see you in your home. And so I might go and see them. I certainly wouldn't pressurize them, because at the point of sale, when I do that bit of business, I need to know that another member of the family is going to be there. So it's no good just having the customer there. You need that third party, you know, not just for their protection, but for my protection as well, because you're easily shot at in this particular business, dealing with, you know, vulnerable people, etc. And then if I follow that up, it will be on the telephone. And in the end, I will say to someone, you know, would you like me to come back to you in 6 months' time, or shall I file my papers? I need to have a conclusion to it. And so that's what I do. I'm very businesslike about it. And I had one person say, you're hounding me. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm a professional business and I need to get to a conclusion. And that's absolutely fine. I don't think we can do business anyway. So thank you very much for your time. Goodbye. No skin up my nose.
Okay, I'm going to take us on to the kind of the third point now, kind of about when they've signed up and they're with you. And so this is normally when I would say the customer experience should be a good experience, because you're actually working with them now and delivering the service. And that isn't always the case either, but, you know, hopefully in this room it is. So you've got the customer signed up now. So you've got to still be thinking of them as the customer and exceeding their expectations kind of even at the start. So you get clear about what they want, so as you can deliver what they want, and then you deliver that and you kind of everything goes smoothly. What other thoughts do you normally give in your business about what else you can do even at that stage? I mean, do you have a consideration about what else can I add to this to make it special? And I know we've had conversations about some of this, so I'm going to pass that round for people to kind of say what they do or what they think they do.
I always try to add additional value if I can, with looking at other things that may benefit them, but not just from the point of view of trying to sell something because I want the money.
Yeah.
Obviously that's part of it. But if, you know, I use Ollie as an example, we had a conversation around something that he might be able to offer in the future as an add-on. I would offer that, but only if it's relevant, or I think it's relevant to the person. So I do try to think about other things as well.
And that's what I want us to do today, is think about what other things you can offer to your clients that they're not expecting, because this for me is about the exceeding expectations.
Yeah.
Nick?
I'm not sure if this is necessarily exceeding expectations, but one thing I really try and major on is just great communication. And that could be just leaving a voicemail message or sending a text occasionally to give them an update, or just a considered email that kind of keeps them up to speed with the process. So they always know where they're at and what's going on. And they're never left feeling that they're hanging and they don't know what's going to happen next. And I think maybe that's because that's how I like to be treated when I'm dealing with somebody. So I try and over deliver on that, but without kind of hounding them so they feel like they're constantly being kind of barraged with emails as well.
Marcus?
Yeah, I guess with my interaction with the customer, and we're talking about the solopreneur here in particular, is quite a delicate one. They're in the in a studio or location being photographed. They feel quite vulnerable. So I really try and pick up on. I think I'm a fairly empathic, or is it pathetic? One of the two type of person. And I can pick up on these emotions quite easily. Anyhow, I try and make it as painless as possible by explaining to people what I'm doing, showing them on the screen, on a computer screen, how it looks, asking for their opinion, and getting them involved in the process as much as possible.
So listening to people, would you say that you deliver it in a really good way, and you deliver what you've set out to deliver? And when you've delivered that, that's it done?
I wouldn't say that I always deliver what I set out to deliver in the right. I think I've got a long way to go with my processes. I think I have all the right thoughts and ideas in my head. I just don't always deliver in the way that I want to, and I'm true to myself. And Nick, I just want to say that your processes are great. Having been through your onboarding, whatever you want to call it, process, I think you've got it nailed.
Thank you.
I definitely don't have that.
Okay. And do you want to give an example of something where you've had a thought about doing and you haven't done it? If you don't worry if you can't bring one to mind, Anne-Marie, but
well, yeah, I mean, I've got a good one going on at the moment that I've been working with a marketing person on doing a social media launch package for authors. I've been working on it since back end of last year. And the reason it's not happened is because I haven't got myself into gear to put the package together and do the contracts and so on. And every day I think, oh, I really must do that because that's going to be a valuable add-on. And I just haven't got around to doing it. So that's, I mean, it doesn't matter from the point of view of, it's not a customer, it's a fellow collaborator, but even still, I am making an impression on that person that perhaps isn't favourable.
And I would say you need to do that because all of those interactions are so important. Yeah,
you're right. It's in my diary every day and I just don't do it. And I couldn't tell you why I don't do it, really.
Right, we'll come back on that maybe. Paul and then Ollie.
I tend to recognise that the person or the people I'm involved with, certainly I'm thinking about individual clients now, they're on a journey, and I recognise that so easily because I've been on perhaps a longer journey than my clients, because normally a lot younger than me, but they're on a journey. So I'm quite fascinated with that journey. So it's not just about their interaction with me, it's where they're going to. My hairdresser yesterday was talking to me about the fact he's thinking of buying the business. So, I woke up this morning concerned about the decision he might make. So I'll be popping in just to add another one and say, look, we should have a coffee. I'm not looking for any business. I'm just interested in the journey. He's a young man, and I think they're trying to tuck him up. If that's journey, I'll freely add ideas. Sometimes people are not as creative and they're devoid of ideas, or ideas spark off things. But also, naturally for me, it's also connections, people that person would benefit from dealing with, and I do that quite a lot. Even if it's not part of the remit, I'm thinking of connections. Glastonbury FM, they've got a real challenge selling radio space. I'm already connecting them to Rod because he used to sell radio space for one of the biggest radio stations in the country. So, you know, I can't help that. So that's the way. I suppose that could be in any area, but I think to nail it, once somebody signed up, you've got to know that isn't the end of it's not the end of the journey for you, and it's not the end of the journey for them.
Yeah, yeah. Ollie and then Rod.
I think I'm pretty good at giving extra value with what I do, but I definitely, and I hold my hand up, that I do struggle with keeping on top of communication and timescales and things like that. Is a real kind of, just because when you're busy, it's just hard to do that. And I wonder whether there are any kind of tips or anything like that, Tracy, that you've got to kind of make that easier, apart from not taking on too much work and that sort of thing.
And that is the tricky bit, because I think there is the value that you've got to do, but you've got to also make this doable for you in the business, you know. So I think we've just got to kind of work out what that is. I'm going to come back to that in a bit, Ollie, if that's all right. I'll bring Rod in, because then we'll pick up some kind of suggestions for things we can do.
Mine's only a quick one. I think, you know, we've got to remember the terms that you often hear at BNI. You know, what goes around comes around. It's a giver's gain. And if we are always talking to people thinking about what's in it for me, because that's what people's of this perception that business people, what's in it for me is the top of their mind. And you've got to try and stay away from that one and think, well, what can you do to benefit the person you're talking to? And it doesn't come back from them. I mean, Paul's a great giver himself, and you know, he knows that that's the way to do it. And he was at a meeting last night. And I mean, you know, I've already put in an email this morning to the people that run that meeting, that, you know, we can learn a lot from this guy. If you let him slip through your fingers, guess what? We'll be back to square one.
So how many of you, so this kind of, what you do with your customers when they're signed up with you and the extra bits you can add also comes into kind of some of the after sales. I'm picking it up now because I think we might run out of time. And I think there is something about that added bit you can give. So for me, I've seen, so I'm going to kind of, we're all part of networking. So we all go to kind of BNI kind of face-to-face and stuff. So how many times have you gone to a kind of face-to-face and there's been either an existing customer in the room or a recently sort of finished customer? Do you make a point of going and talking to them and making them feel special because they were one of your customers? I've seen lots of times where that hasn't happened and it's appalling. So really, if you do that, that's brilliant, because you need to do that. Have you thought about, can you add value in that? You know, so if you're at kind of some of those face-to-face, especially if you're a photographer and stuff, and you've got your camera with you and you're taking photos, you could take photos of ex-customers and kind of send them something that says, saw you at this event, took a few photographs of you, thought you might like them. Do you know, that keeps you relevant in their mind at no extra cost? Not necessarily, I don't think anyway, but you know, it kind of is what you do. So how can you kind of add, sometimes go with your customers either in the service, you know, if you do photography and do you tell them how many photographs you're going to give them at the end of it? Or is it just whatever you've done?
Within a band, I suppose, yeah.
So do you ever go over that band?
No, that's worse.
Is it? Why?
Because you give choice. So much choice, exactly. Yeah, I think, you know, the less you give them, the better it is, ironically.
Mm.
Yeah.
He who has a choice has a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Why? Because when you say choice, what? Because of which ones they'll use?
No, it's more that they're overwhelmed with choice. And
right.
So that becomes a negative as opposed to a positive. It's real, editing is a real, photography when you're delivering it, it's a real skill in editing and cutting it back. And I can always tell when photographers say, oh, I gave them hundreds of photos. It's like, well, you're not very good at editing then, are you? You're leaving it up to somebody else to do your job for you.
So can I ask a question? Because I don't know the answer to this. So if you've taken lots of photographs of somebody and you've given them those things, what stops you a month later sending them another 2 photographs to say, oh, I had these, I thought they were lovely, I thought you might as well have those?
Well, you can do that, but I don't think you should have got it right in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But that isn't about getting it right or wrong, is it?
Yes. It is
That-
about getting it right or wrong. It is.
I think
yes.
Tracy's got a good point here.
Not,
I think
not as a customer. For me, as a customer, Marcus, if you then sent me another 2 photographs that you've used that I haven't been able to use, and you're doing that as for free to say, you know, love working with you, and you know, you've sent me a letter after I've worked with you to say love working with you, all the nice things, and then you sent me 2 more photographs that you already had or that you'd taken, I'd be kind of really wowed by that.
But why didn't you not include them in the photos in the first place?
I can see Marcus's point. That
Oh,
that's
I can
No, it's, yeah, that's an interesting point. But yeah, I think you've got to. I mean, Nick, what do you think? Come on, what do you think? You're the other voice, photography voice here.
No, I think it's down to us to curate the final set that goes to the client. But that doesn't mean that you don't give them anything. You know, you've got to give them enough to choose from and enough variety. I will give a client maybe multiple expressions of a similar setup, because I know they're very slightly different, and the client might see something different in a photo to what I see it. But I still curated those images before they've gone to the client, so that they don't get everything, because as Marcus said, that would just overwhelm them. There's a balance to be struck here, I think, in terms of what you show and what you don't show. But if you can do something special within that, then that could be the wow factor.
Okay, what I would do is I might send up later an edited version of it with a different background with their logo in, or I might do a PNG, you know, where it's been cut out.
or a social media one.
Yeah. Well, I do that. Yes, I do that.
Brilliant. So that for me is a really good sign of kind of where you're exceeding the customer expectations, you know. So for me, I would just say, think about those things you can do, whether you want to kind of frame a photograph and send it to them as a special, you know, and for me, because especially with photographers, you absolutely want them to kind of be recommending you to the next person. You absolutely want them to come back to you when they want a second shoot or something, you know. So the more you keep in their face, you know, in terms of being relevant and stuff, I think that makes it much more easier for them to write the review, because, you know, you've delivered the service I want, then you've done this, and then you've done that, and when I finish with you, you sent me a little gift that's all kind of packaged, and you know, I'm gonna remember you. I'm gonna review what you've done. I'm gonna kind of, you know, always think good on that. Whereas if I go to a networking group and I'm a customer of yours and you don't even speak to me, and when I was signing up for you, you're doing all the chasing to kind of get me to sign up, and then when I've signed up, you kind of almost don't bother. You do what you need to do, but it's kind of like done it, dusted. I'm never going to recommend you again, and I'm never going to go back with you again. Absolutely not, you know. That's the difference, and that's where I think we've just got to think about it. So I think, Martin, you've had your hand up, then Nick.
No, I was just going back to the point about giving extra ideas and stuff. As a designer, I think you give a choice, but you don't give too many, you know. So personally, you might do hundreds of ideas, but as a professional, you want to guide the client down what you think is the best for them. So I think by giving them too many choices, they may not end up with what I think is the best result. So
I think that's sound, but I think just also pay attention to the customer in terms of, are they getting what they think they're getting, or is there any signs of any dissatisfaction there that you might need to pick up on and understand what you need to do for that? Not saying there is, but that might be just something you need to think about. Nick, and then Anne-Marie.
Yeah, Tracy, I think your point about making customers feel special is really powerful, isn't it? And I think just picking on what Ollie was saying earlier about, as you get busier, it becomes more difficult to find, or you have to make a real conscious effort to find the time and consciously make your clients feel special. Because I think as you get busy, you're moving on to the next project, aren't you? And perhaps you're moving on too quickly, and you're not actually making that outgoing client feeling special at the time. So I think we've got to kind of be intentional, haven't we, within our processes somehow. Because it doesn't always come natural, because you're just so busy, you're kind of shooting off the next thing.
And that's why you've got to have it all these different touch points to just think about it, you know. And if you choose not to, that's your choice. But I think just make the conscious decision. Either you're not going to do that because you've got loads of clients coming in and you don't need it. That's a choice you can make. Or actually, if I do this, that's going to make me, I think not only does it make you stand out in the customer eyes, I think it also makes you feel better about the service you're providing.
Definitely.
Anne-Marie?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say to Martin, actually, I think you are giving more than you perhaps think you are, because when you did my the last 2 logos that you sent me, you did the 2, and then you also sent me a combined one, and I wasn't expecting a combined one, and I thought, oh, that's really lovely, because then I hadn't considered that there was a chance where I might want just one single combined logo rather than the 2 separate ones that we're working on. So for me, that was like, oh, that's really good. I hadn't thought of that. Brilliant. Thanks, Martin. So I think you probably are doing it.
But I think all of us need to do it more, because the wow factor you get with exceeding that or doing something somebody hadn't thought about pays so much more dividend. Paul and then Ollie.
I think it was Ollie first, but very quickly, I'm thinking about the photographers here. Sometimes when you deal, the client eventually is paying for what they want. They might not see things the way you see things. It's like going for a haircut. You see yourself in the same way you've had your hair for years. Somebody else sees you differently. It's having that bravery to go with a professional. And if you rephrase to Marcus, the point you made is that if the client has chosen those photographs, and let's say a few weeks later, they've not chosen the photograph that you think would make the difference, that's a little bit braver, it's that you could send, you know, because you've got to remember that with a creative, there's that we've got to remember that a creative, that their creativity is very important to them as well. That's, you know, so, you know, and clients won't always choose, they won't always be brave in terms of photography or any decision for that matter. Whereas, you know, that if they were to be that, just push it a little bit further, then anyway, I'll hand over to Ollie.
I'm looking forward to the massive gold-framed portrait of myself that Nick's going to put in the post soon, and that would be great for you to see. My fireplace. I was going to just what Anne-Marie said, and Martin. Martin, you probably already do this, but with a couple of clients where I've done logos for previously, you can do mock-ups of them on things, can't you? And like on, you know, t-shirts, hats, things like that. And I was doing one for a personal trainer recently, and I kind of sent him these logo ideas, but I also did the mock-ups on like a water bottle on a gym training vest top, and the same with a holiday let. I kind of did them on some signage and business cards, and it helped. I think not only that, given, like you say, Tracy, that extra value, but some people struggle to visualize things, and so for those particular clients it worked quite well, because they could look at it and say, okay, that's what it would look like on the side of my car or on a baseball cap or something like that. And I found that quite a useful thing to do with them.
Marcus.
I hope this goes down all right. I work with a lot of women in my business. I'm lucky enough to work with a lot of women in my business. Do you think, as a woman, you and Anne-Marie, do you think you expect to get better customer service from a woman or a man?
Oh, a man.
Oh, why?
Because a lot of women in business are horrible.
Shall we edit that out?
Okay.
Yeah, you probably need to edit everything I've said today. Paul. I mean, one of the today.
What do you think, Tracy?
It's funny because I don't know that I've ever thought of it gender specific in terms of customer services. I think it very much depends. For me, that's something I would kind of fathom out in my. Actually, it's funny, if I'm going to, if I think of the photographers I know and who I would kind of use from what I've learned over the last few years, it would be men I would go to, because even though there's some women ones out there, I feel, yeah, but actually, you know, and I've got a photographer that I've used. I'm on groups with other ones, but I have to say, Marcus and Nick, you two would be my two go-to guys because I've got to know you. Now, your price differentiation might be an issue. Yeah, that's something that always factors in, because it does. We all kind of judge things on the kind of price, but I would absolutely trust both of you to do a really good job.
As customer service, I'm talking not on photography, I'm talking about customer service.
Marcus, doesn't it come down to
the different industries and stuff?
Great women who offer great customer service and no great men that offer great customer service. I don't think you can split it by.
I'll be honest. I think women do it better than men. I think other women photographers do it better than me, and I do worry about that. Not a big way, but a little way.
Yeah. I mean, I use a female celebrant, and I have a male celebrant, as Paul knows, that I could use. But why do I constantly use the same female? And the reason for me, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but why do I use her all the time? Mainly because she's in sync with me, knows exactly what I'm expecting and what we're expecting to deliver to the customer. But the most important thing is, because she's female, it's a softer approach. She has a nicer way of smoothing the personality and being really empathetic and trying to understand from that point of view. And I think that really does help. Certainly helps me. And it helps the customer as well, which is really important.
Ollie, and then I probably need to wrap up and hand back to you, Paul, because we're at the end of it.
I think Rod's hit the nail on the head there. I think irrespective of gender, I think whether it's whatever company, there's certain companies or individuals I look up to and how they provide their service. And it's kind of looking at that and thinking, what is it that they're doing? There's certain bits that I might not like, but there'll be some bits which I really like. And then how can I incorporate that into my business? And I think, whether, like for you, Marcus, it might be the female photographers you say. What is it about them that makes that you kind of think that they're giving a better customer service, and how can you then bring that into your business maybe?
I think that customer service, and I think Tracy led off with this, is very much, in fact she did lead off with it. She led off with is how people feel, it's their emotion, and that is at the heart of customer service. And I think women demonstrate that. They tend to demonstrate that more because of their motherly instinct, because that's their nature, to be more involved with emotion and feelings than a lot of men. That's not to say that men don't have that. They do have it. It's perhaps suppressed. It's not considered when you're a little boy to cry, don't be. So it's back to that. I think Marcus's answer, it's back to that feeling of that emotion. I think that's why a lot of women feel comfortable around gay men, because they bring their their emotions out. So I think it's back. That's neatly back to Tracy. Sorry.
Do you want a cup of tea in a minute?
No. Marcus, I think
that's not the answer. No, you don't have to be. I'm in touch with my feminine side. You don't have to be gay to be in touch with your feminine side, Paul.
No, I'm not saying at all. I'm in touch with my emotions. That wasn't. Well, again, that's how somebody's read that. All I'm saying is that's why a lot of women feel comfortable with gay men, or any person that is in touch with their emotions.
Yes, that's more like it.
I would dispute that though, Paul.
Right. Okay.
You started something for next week.
No, I would just say, I don't look at people and think that's a gay person, therefore they're more in touch with their emotions, therefore I connect with them more. I connect with a person for a person.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean it. I've obviously said the wrong thing.
I know what you're saying. I wouldn't automatically feel more comfortable with a gay person than I would with a straight person.
I only say that because of my background experience in hairdressing, and a lot of the men were gay or effeminate or whatever. And I do know that women feel less threatened by that. A lot of women, there's no generalization, they feel less threatened then maybe we're moving into areas we shouldn't really move into. Tracy, back to you.
Just to move this into a slightly different kind of dynamic, and Anne-Marie's right in some respects, because sometimes women are much harder in business because they have to prove themselves and stuff like that, and kind of so I think let's not get into the battle of sexes, because I think there's pluses and minuses on all fronts, you know, and actually we've got to engage on a personal level and make sure that we get to know people and get to trust and like them, and as we've sort of said before. So on that note, I'm going to hand back to Paul to close the meeting.
Right, we've actually, I'm glad we haven't raced ahead to the two areas that we've not covered. That's complaints and after sales, because I, for one, have found it absolutely riveting. I think not only has the content been great, you've been, I think you ought to take over all the meetings now, because you've got engagement from everybody. I think everybody's rapidly taking notes. I think it's an excellent session, Tracy, and I'd like to say a big thank you on behalf
Well
of
done, Tracy.
I love doing it, actually. I really enjoyed it, especially they are bad.
I'll leave. So I think those two areas could be saved over for the start of next week, and I'll weave it into whatever we do next week. But I think we shouldn't let those two go, because they're the two areas that maybe some people fear: complaints and that after sale. So I'll certainly work those in. Rod, just your feedback from today.
I'm not gay. Oh, very good. Thanks, Tracy.
I am going to say this. I just think we've got to be careful, because even though we're joking and we're all laughing, there are some real serious issues in some of the conversation. So I think let's just park it, because I think it can kind of move into being offensive and stuff. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, no, those, I mean, Marcus.
Yeah, brilliant job, Tracy. I really enjoyed that. Definitely. Let me know when you start your own marketing crew. I'll be swapping sides.
Nick.
Brilliant.
Really well chaired, Tracy. Fantastic. A lot of energy today, wasn't there? It was brilliant. And I'd just like to say, irrespective of gender or sexuality, I think there's this thing called emotional intelligence that we all have. And so I think some people, my wife is very emotionally intelligent, which gets very annoying at times. But I think if we can use more emotional intelligence in business, actually that will make us more insightful in the way in which we deal with people.
Yeah.
And that's all I have to say.
Anne-Marie.
Yeah, please ignore and edit every single thing that I've said today. But what I would take away, fantastic, really loved it, great, is that I need to really get on top of the processes, because I know where they're falling down and I'm just not addressing that. So that's kind of really brought it home to me how important that is to keep that communication going, etc., etc. So brilliant, thanks, Tracy, loved it.
Martin.
Yeah, same. I really enjoyed what Tracy had to say, and really made you think about what you do yourself. And yeah, thanks, Tracy. It was a great job. Thanks.
Ollie.
Yeah, great job, Tracy. Really enjoyed that. Yeah, like Anne-Marie, I think for me, it's made me think again about my processes. Need to keep on top of my customer service, communication, time expectations, things like that. Also, I think the bit for me was when you talked about people checking you out as well was really important, and a good reminder for me that I need to pull my finger out and update my website and make that look a bit better in terms of the projects and news on there. So thank you.
And Tracy, how do you feel about it?
Well, I loved it. I really enjoyed delivering the kind of the subject matter and having the discussion. And I think there's such talent in this room that I think we ought to do more of that on all different subjects, because there is so much real kind of core talent in here that sharing that is kind of really good.
Yeah.
So
I
it
think
reminds me of a song, Paul. Talent. Britain's Got Talent. Oh, sorry, that's a TV show, isn't it?
Never watched that. Anne-Marie some time ago talked about accountability, and maybe what we do is we kick off next week with in digesting this, just one thing we've decided to do differently. So very well to take notes and go away and get on, and I've got to take somebody to the railway station now, but it's exactly what are we going to do with what we've just picked up on, even if it's just one thing. So I'm going to lead off with that next week. All right. Thanks very much to everybody. Have a great week.